Hello, guys. Welcome you all to the Insights into Books podcast. Before we start, kindly follow or subscribe us. And if you want daily summary files of these books, then subscribe us on Gumroad. Links are in description. Now, let's start today's discussion, guys. So, if you feel like your professional life is just this constant battle against the screen, where every single notification feels like it's pulling you away from the work that actually counts, then yeah, you're pretty much where most of us knowledge workers are right now. We're kind of swimming in this sea of information overload, constant connectivity.
It's overwhelming.
Totally. And it feels like we're just drowning in like low-value tasks most of the time.
And that feeling, that specific feeling of being perpetually overwhelmed, that's really the heart of the issue we're digging into. What we found looking at the sources is that while all this digital distraction is, well, everywhere and probably getting worse.
Yeah, seems like it.
The ability to actually focus, to truly concentrate, that's become incredibly rare. And, when you've got a skill that's both rare and produces real high-value results.
Okay.
Well, that's basically the competitive advantage in today's economy, the 21st century edge, if you like.
That's a really interesting way to put it. So our mission today, then, is to try and cut through all that noise.
Exactly.
We're going deep into the theory, but also the practice of actually cultivating that rare skill, this ability that seems to determine success and maybe even fulfillment in this modern work landscape.
And it's not just about, productivity hacks, little tips and tricks.
Right, this feels bigger.
It is. It's more about a fundamental shift, a restructuring of how you approach work itself, and importantly, how you find meaning in it.
Okay, so we'll cover the sort of why first, the theory behind it all.
Yep, the psychological foundations. And then we'll break down 4 pretty rigorous practical rules for actually building this focus into your daily life, actionable stuff.
Great, so where do we start? The groundwork.
Let's start with the groundwork. We absolutely need a clear, really precise definition of what this powerful skill actually is. Because, let's be honest, just sitting at your desk for 8 hours, that doesn't automatically count.
Right, definitely not. Okay, let's unpack that core definition then.
Yeah.
Deep work is what?
Yeah.
It's professional activity, done when you're completely distraction-free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Distraction-free concentration. And crucially, it's work that pushes your cognitive capabilities right to their limit.
Pushes your limits, okay.
Yeah, the effort has to be structured, it needs to be intense, and it's absolutely vital for the final output you're trying to create.
So what makes it different? You mentioned sort of key factors.
Right. There are 3 main things that really set it apart. First, it absolutely has to create new value, something genuinely new.
New value.
Second, it must improve your skill set. You should actually be getting better at something difficult while you're doing it. It stretches you.
Right, so you're learning or refining as you go.
Precisely. And third, and this one is maybe the most critical identifier, it must be hard for others to replicate.
Hard to replicate.
Meaning, if just anyone off the street with maybe a bit of basic training could do the task, then it simply cannot be deep work.
Okay. So we're talking about things like writing really complex code.
Yeah. Or drafting a major legal strategy, designing a completely new scientific experiment, or maybe synthesizing a huge amount of complex data into like a coherent strategic vision, that kind of heavy lifting.
That distinction, the replicability thing, that feels like a really good metric. I like that simple test you mentioned, the college graduate test.
It's great because it forces you to be brutally honest with yourself about the task.
How does it work again?
You just ask yourself, how long, we're talking in months, would it take to train a reasonably smart but inexperienced recent college grad to do this specific task competently?
Okay.
If the answer is, just a month or 2, maybe even only a few weeks, then that task, it falls squarely into the shallow category.
But if it takes years of experience, high-level skill, intense focus,
then you're almost certainly looking at deep work. That's the zone.
The tough reality, though, is that most of us, myself included probably, spend a massive chunk of our day doing the opposite, doing shadow work.
Absolutely. That's the default for many. Shallow work is all those non-cognitively demanding tasks. The logistical stuff, easy to replicate, and often, crucially, done while you're distracted.
Like managing the email deluge.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic. Or logging your timesheets, endless back and forth on instant messenger, scheduling and then rescheduling meetings. You know the drill.
I do indeed.
These tasks, they often feel necessary, sometimes urgent even, but they tend to create very little new lasting value. They're easily substitutable and Frankly, they're the biggest drain on a modern professional's time and energy.
And it's not just the time spent on the shallow stuff, right? It's the switching. That idea from Professor Sophie Leroy, the attention residue tax, that sounds important.
It's huge. And it's insidious, really, because we often fool ourselves into thinking we're good multitaskers. We think we can just dip in and out.
Yeah, I'll just quickly check my email.
Exactly. But Leroy's research shows that when you switch from task A, say, writing that complex report, to task B, like that quick email reply, a residue of your attention actually stays stuck thinking about task A. Its rules, its status, where you left off.
So even though you're typing the email,
Your brain's still partly back with the report. Your cognitive load is split. And that lingering residue, it severely, severely dampens your performance on task B, the email. And then it hampers your return to task A.
wait, hang on. So checking that one, seemingly harmless Slack message, it doesn't just cost me the 5 minutes it took to type the reply.
Nope. Yep.
It actually poisons the next, hour of trying to get back into deep work because my brain is still holding on to the context of that chat.
That's exactly it. The cognitive cost is way higher than the time cost. And the residue effect is particularly thick, particularly damaging if you switch away from a task you couldn't fully complete before switching. An unbounded task.
Unbounded,
Like if you quickly open your inbox, see 3 new emails that look urgent, but then you force yourself to close it and go back to your coding project. Those 3 urgent items are still lurking. They're actively consuming cognitive energy in the background.
Ah, okay. So your mind keeps circling back.
Constantly cycling back to the unfinished business. It makes it basically impossible to achieve that pure, distraction-free concentration needed for real deep work. That's why even those super brief interruptions are so devastating to high-level performance.
Wow, okay. This evidence really paints a clear picture then. It perfectly illustrates what you call the deep work hypothesis, right? That this ability to do deep work is getting rarer.
Increasingly rare,
Yeah.
largely because of all the digital distraction.
Well, at the exact same time, it's becoming massively more valuable in the economy.
Precisely. It's that combination, increasing rarity plus increasing value, that makes it, well, you called it a superpower. And that's not hyperbole.
A 21st century superpower.
It really is, because it directly addresses the core demands of the modern economic landscape. You need deep work to cultivate the 2 absolute core abilities required to thrive today.
Okay, what are those 2?
First, you absolutely must have the capacity to quickly master hard things. New skills, complex systems, emerging technology.
Right, things are changing so fast.
Exactly. And mastering hard things quickly requires intense, focused attention. It's very similar to the idea of deliberate practice and skill acquisition. You need to focus intently on a specific skill element to force the relevant brain circuits to fire repeatedly, myelinate, and strengthen rapidly.
And if your attention is scattered?
That neurological process just doesn't happen efficiently. You learn slowly, if at all. Deep work enables rapid learning.
Okay, so mastering hard things quickly is number 1. What's the second core ability?
The second is the ability to produce output at an elite level. And that means both high quality and high quantity, or at least high speed.
Quality and quantity. How does that work?
Well, it comes down to this really fundamental productivity formula. High quality work produced, time spent X. Intensity of focus.
Okay, time spent times intensity of focus.
Right. And this formula, it really changes how you should think about work. It shows that intensity, your level of focus, isn't just additive, it's a multiplier.
A multiplier.
Yeah. So if you can manage to double your intensity of focus, theoretically, you could have the time needed to produce the same amount of high-quality work.
So the goal isn't necessarily just grinding out more hours.
No. The smarter goal, the more leveraged goal, is to maximize the intensity of the hours you do work.
This is where those anecdotes come in, right? Like those super high-achieving college students who somehow seem to study less than everyone else but get better grades.
Exactly those examples. Those top students didn't succeed by spending, 12 hours straight in the library, fueled by caffeine.
Right. We all knew people like that.
They succeeded because they implicitly understood that the marginal value of the, say, 10th hour of kind of distracted, half-hearted studying is almost 0.
Okay.
So instead, they focus ruthlessly on maximizing the intensity of their first hour or 2. They'd isolate themselves completely, make sure they were rested and fed, and then apply intense, unbroken concentration. They forced the learning process to be incredibly efficient.
While the students just below them were.
Often studying for longer total hours, sure, but constantly breaking their concentration. Checking phones, grabbing snacks, chatting with friends. They were maximizing time, maybe, but minimizing focus intensity, which leads to a much shallower, less effective effort.
And this applies beyond college, obviously. You see this with historical figures, too.
Absolutely. When you look at people who produced massive foundational work, think a Bill Gates in his early coding days, or maybe a Mark Twain needing isolation to write. They often cultivated habits of extreme, almost obsessive focus. They were leveraging deep work to get disproportionate results, often in surprisingly compressed periods.
Right.
Hashtag 1.3, why we default to shallow work.
Okay, so if the math is that clear, if deep work is demonstrably the path to elite results and rapid learning, why aren't more people doing it? Why do most knowledge workers seem to default to, well, the shallow end of the pool?
Yeah, it's a paradox, isn't it? It really boils down to a combination of human psychology and, frankly, a lot of modern organizational culture. The primary driver psychologically is what's called the principle of least resistance.
The principle of least resistance sounds intuitive.
It is. Basically, when there's no immediate, clear, objective feedback on how a specific behavior impacts the bottom line, and let's face it, in complex knowledge work, that link is often fuzzy.
Right, it's hard to measure the value of 1 hour of thinking.
Exactly. So in the absence of that clear feedback, people naturally default to the behavior that is easiest in the moment and deep concentration. It's mentally taxing. It's uncomfortable. It requires effort.
Whereas hitting reply all or quickly checking Twitter.
Instant gratification. It's easy. It feels productive for a second, even if it isn't. We choose momentary comfort over sustained, difficult focus.
So we're kind of wired to avoid the hard mental stuff if we can. And then the work environment often reinforces these bad habits. You mentioned busyness as a proxy for productivity.
Yes, this is huge in many workplaces. Since the actual output of deep work, like that complex strategy doc or the new algorithm, might take weeks or even months to fully materialize, it's hard to see progress on a daily basis.
So managers look for other signals.
They do. And visible activity becomes the easiest proxy metric for value. The employee who's always instantly responsive on Slack, attends every single optional meeting, answers emails within 5 minutes, they look incredibly busy.
And therefore, they appear valuable, even if their actual deep output is low.
Precisely. Visibility trumps value creation in many cultures.
And this gets worse with the modern culture of connectivity, right? Things like open plan offices.
Oh, open offices are often catastrophic for deep work. They might have been designed with collaboration in mind, but in practice, they frequently become these hubs of constant noise, visual distraction, and interruptions.
Yeah, hard to concentrate when you can hear 3 other conversations.
Absolutely. It makes focused work nearly impossible without serious personal countermeasures, like noise-canceling headphones and a will of steel, and then you layer on top the pervasive nature of instant messaging systems, Slack, Teams, whatever.
Which demand immediate responses.
They create an expectation of near instantaneous availability. The whole system rewards quick, shallow attention switches over sustained, deep, high-quality thought. Organizations, often unintentionally, end up prioritizing responsiveness over reflection and deep problem solving.
And sometimes this pressure even extends beyond the immediate work. You see organizations, even really respected ones, like, say, traditional news outlets or research labs, pushing employees to maintain a constant social media presence.
Yeah, it happens because social media engagement offers easily measurable, visible metrics, likes, shares, replies. It feels like activity. But it's a fundamentally shallow activity that actively pulls focus and energy away from their core, deep work responsibilities, like investigative journalism or complex research.
So it's like a vicious cycle, and it keeps going because of this metric black hole idea.
Exactly. The real cost of all these small, constant distractions is incredibly difficult to quantify in hard numbers. You can't easily put a dollar figure on the 2 hours of lost cognitive efficiency tomorrow that resulted from checking email 20 times today.
Because it's subtle and delayed.
Right. And because that damage is hard to measure, management often fails to even recognize it, let alone address it or budget for creating focus-friendly environments. So these shallow work habits just become entrenched. They dominate the workday culture, and they slowly, quietly erode the organization's overall capacity for real innovation, complex problem solving, and deep thinking. Hashtag 1.4 deep work as a path to meaning and fulfillment.
This whole discussion, though, it raises a really important question. Is this just about climbing the corporate ladder faster or, making more money? Or is there something deeper here, something more human? The sources seem to argue that deep work is fundamentally tied to personal satisfaction, to meaning.
Oh, it absolutely is. That's a core part of the argument. The central philosophical idea here is the craftsmanship ideal.
The craftsmanship ideal. Okay.
Think about a traditional artisan, maybe a skilled woodworker crafting a beautiful piece of furniture, or a watchmaker meticulously assembling a complex movement. Their deep engagement in that challenging, demanding task generates a profound sense of satisfaction and meaning.
Why? Because they're focused on the skill.
Partly, yes. It comes from the pride in their highly honed skills, the intense focus required by the process itself, and the tangible, high-quality, complex thing they create at the end. There's a direct connection between effort, skill, and valuable output.
Which is often missing in modern knowledge work, right?
Yeah.
Our output is often intangible, a report, a spreadsheet, some lines of code. It doesn't have that same physical presence.
Exactly. It can feel abstract, disconnected, but deep work can help restore that sense of craftsmanship, even in knowledge work.
Oh.
By forcing you into that state of intense, purposeful challenge on something meaningful, deep work generates its own intrinsic rewards. It creates the conditions for the psychological state known as flow.
Flow. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's concept.
That's the one. Flow is that state where you are so completely immersed in an activity, so focused, that time itself seems to just melt away. Your sense of self might even diminish. You're just fully engaged in the task.
And that happens when...
It typically happens when the difficulty of the task is perfectly balanced with the level of your skill. It's challenging, but achievable. And the deep work environment, being deliberately distraction-free, pushing your cognitive limits, provides the absolute perfect framework to regularly access and even extend these flow states.
And being in flow feels good.
It feels amazing. Research shows it's one of the peak human experiences. When you're in flow, you're not just being highly productive, you are often intensely happy, engaged, and deeply fulfilled by the activity itself.
So deep work isn't just a tool for your job description. It's actually a pathway to ensuring that the time you spend working is high-quality time for you, leading to maybe a deep life.
Precisely. That's the bigger, more profound argument. That a deep life, one that's characterized by focused engagement, rich experiences, meaningful contributions, both professionally and personally, leads directly to a good life, a life of substance and satisfaction.
It connects back to that idea. What you focus on determines your reality.
Exactly. If we accept that core premise, who you are, what you think, feel, and do, what you love, is fundamentally the sum of what you focus on, then constantly allowing your focus to drift to trivial, fragmented digital noise, well, you're essentially outsourcing your inner life, your quality of experience, to the algorithms of the distraction economy.
Wow, that's quite a thought.
By choosing deep work, by choosing to concentrate your limited mental energy on things that genuinely matter, you're not just boosting your career, you're actively choosing to enhance your overall personal significance and the quality of your lived experience.
Okay, that's a really powerful foundation. The why is incredibly clear.
Yeah.
Now let's pivot to the how. We know willpower alone isn't enough, right? You can't just decide to focus all day, every day. It's finite.
It's notoriously unreliable and easily depleted, so we have to replace that reliance on sheer willpower with disciplined structure. That brings us to the first rule: work deeply. And this rule is all about establishing routines and rituals.
Why routine?
Routines are absolutely non-negotiable because they essentially automate the transition into the deep work state. They minimize the mental friction, the activation energy required to actually start concentrating.
Okay, so less internal battling each time. Where do you start with building a routine?
The very first step is to figure out which overall structural approach, which depth philosophy, best fits your life and your work obligations. You really need to consciously choose one of the 4 philosophies of depth.
4 philosophies? Okay, let's go through them. What's the first one? Sounds intense. The monastic philosophy.
And it's the most intense, yes. The monastic approach involves a really drastic, almost severe minimization of shallow obligations. Think near total isolation from the noise.
The hermit.
Pretty much. The classic example given is the computer scientist Donald Knuth. He famously doesn't use email at all. 0. He dedicates long, completely isolated periods solely to his complex work.
Wow, no email.
It offers maximum possible concentration, obviously, but let's be realistic, it's completely impractical for the vast majority of professionals today who need to collaborate, interact with clients, teach students, manage teams.
Yeah, not feasible for most. So what's next? The bimodal philosophy. Is that more doable?
It's slightly more realistic for some, but still pretty rigorous. Bimodal means you have clearly defined separate periods of normal, connected life, alternating with intense, isolated, deep work retreats or blocks.
So like splitting your week or year.
Exactly. Think of professors or writers who might stack all their teaching, meetings, and admin into, say, 2 days of the week or one semester of the year. And then the rest of the time is fiercely protected for deep, isolated research or writing.
How long do those deep periods need to be?
It really requires at least a full day of isolation to be truly effective. Anything less than that, say just a couple of hours, tends to dissolve back into distraction pretty easily with this model. The strength is you can still fulfill your collaborative duties, but you also guarantee these significant, protected chunks of intense focus.
Okay. Now, for people just starting out, or maybe those with really regular schedules, the rhythmic philosophy sounds like maybe the easiest entry point.
Absolutely. I think for most people, the rhythmic approach is the most practical and sustainable way to begin. It's all about scheduling regular, dedicated, deep work sessions daily and building the habit through sheer consistency.
Like carving out time every morning.
That's a very common way to do it. Maybe it's 90 minutes, maybe it's 2.5 hours every single morning before the main chaos of the day kicks in. You reserve that block for your single most important, cognitively demanding task.
And doing it at the same time helps.
Massively. By starting and ending around the same time each day, you turn that deep work session into an ingrained, almost automatic habit. The consistency itself helps you bypass that limited willpower you have early in the day. It becomes non-negotiable.
Okay, that makes sense. And the last one, the journalistic philosophy. You mentioned this seems high risk.
It is. This one is really only recommended for seasoned, deep work veterans, people with incredibly well-developed concentration muscles. The journalistic approach means fitting deep work in wherever you can find a gap, literally switching into deep focus mode the moment a spare hour appears between meetings, like a journalist on deadline.
Why is it so risky for beginners?
Because of that attention residue tax we talked about. This level of rapid, on-demand context switching is incredibly mentally taxing. For most novices, trying this just leads to fragmented, shallow, ineffective attempts at focus. You need serious discipline to pull it off consistently.
Okay. So pick a philosophy that fits. But regardless of which one you choose, the execution needs to be, well, disciplined, like running a business operation. You mentioned using systems like the 4 disciplines of execution. 40X.
Yeah, applying a framework like 40X to your personal deep work goals can be incredibly powerful. It brings structure and accountability. It means treating your primary deep work objective as your wildly important goal, or WIG.
Wildly important goal. I like that.
And then you execute on it ruthlessly using the 4 disciplines. First, focus on the WIG. Don't try to achieve 10 deep things at once. Pick one major goal that requires deep work.
Okay, focus.
Second, act on the lead measures. This is crucial. You don't track the outcome like the finished report. That's a lag measure. You track the behavior that leads to the outcome. In this case, the hours spent in distraction-free deep work concentration. That's your lead measure.
So track the deep work time itself.
Exactly.
What?
Third, keep a compelling scoreboard. Make your progress visible. It could be as simple as putting an X on a wall calendar for every deep work hour completed, or using a time tracking app. Seeing the streak builds momentum and accountability. It gamifies it a bit.
A visual tracker. Makes sense.
And fourth, create a cadence of accountability. Regularly review your scoreboard. Weekly is good, even if it's just reviewing it yourself or maybe with an accountability partner. Did you hit your deep work hours target? Why or why not? This regular check-in keeps you honest and helps you adjust.
So that provides the structure. What about the actual moment of starting deep work? Creating a deep work ritual and environment seems key, like a trigger.
Absolutely. The ritual acts as a powerful psychological cue. It signals to your brain, okay, serious focus is required, NW. It needs consistent elements.
Like what?
Things like preparing your mind, maybe a minute of just closing your eyes and defining the goal for the session. Preparing your physical environment, turning off all notifications, phone silenced and out of sight, desktop alerts off, email closed, IM shut down.
The full lockdown.
The full lockdown. Maybe using a consistent location or specific background sound like instrumental music or white noise via noise-canceling headphones. And clearly defining the specific desired outcome for that work block. By repeating this exact sequence every time, the ritual itself becomes the automatic on-ramp to focus to flow.
And sometimes, if the task feels really huge or daunting, you might need something more dramatic. The grand gesture.
Yeah, the grand gesture is about leveraging significance. It involves making a notable investment, could be significant time, serious effort, or even money, or making a radical change in your environment, specifically to signal the immense importance of this task to your own brain.
Like booking a flight just to work on the plane.
That's a classic example. Or renting a secluded cabin for a weekend solely to write that difficult chapter. Or even just booking an expensive hotel room downtown for a day of focused work. By making the setup costly or unusual, you dramatically increase the perceived importance in your mind.
So you're less likely to procrastinate because you've made this big commitment.
Exactly. It tells your subconscious, this is an optional browsing time. This is the most critical thing I could be doing right now. And that tends to boost the intensity and focus you bring.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, finally, under this rule, we need to talk about ending the workday properly. You emphasized prioritizing downtime and using a shutdown ritual. Why is this so crucial? It feels like the opposite of working deeply.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it's perhaps the most underrated component for sustainable deep work. Implementing a strict shutdown ritual at the end of your designated workday is absolutely non-negotiable for long-term focus.
What does that ritual look like?
Before you physically or mentally leave work, you take a few minutes to review any incomplete tasks or open loops from the day. You make a quick plan for how and when you'll tackle them tomorrow, maybe adding them to your schedule. Then, crucially, you mentally declare the workday finished. Some people literally say out loud, "shutdown complete."
Why does saying that help?
It helps release the burden of that attention residue tax we discussed earlier. By ensuring every open loop is captured and has a plan, you assure your mind that nothing important will be forgotten. It allows your subconscious to let go of work-related thoughts.
So your brain can actually switch off.
Exactly. And the other critical piece is committing to truly disconnecting. Turning off work email notifications on your phone, resisting the urge to just check one thing after hours. If your brain is constantly scanning for incoming work signals, even subconsciously, it never fully rests and recovers.
And that hurts performance the next day.
Absolutely. Quality rest isn't just a break from work. It is the essential foundation for high-quality work the next day. Downtime is when your brain recharges, consolidates learning, and prepares for the next bout of intense focus. You have to protect it fiercely.
Okay, Rule 1 was about structuring our external world routines, rituals, environment. Rule 2 seems to shift inward to disciplining our minds. It tackles that core mental challenge, training ourselves to actually tolerate boredom or even just the absence of constant stimulation instead of reflexively reaching for our phones. Concentration, you said earlier, it's like a muscle.
It is exactly like a muscle. And just like a physical muscle, it atrophies very quickly if it's not regularly exercised. If we constantly habitually reach for our phones or open a new browser tab at the slightest hint of mental challenge or momentary boredom,
Which, let's be honest, is most of us these days.
it really is. We've effectively conditioned our brains to crave instant, novel stimulation. The research by the late Stanford professor Clifford Nass was quite alarming here. He found evidence suggesting that this kind of chronic multitasking and constant attention switching doesn't just temporarily impair focus. It might actually have lasting negative effects. It could potentially permanently reduce our underlying capacity for deep, sustained concentration.
Permanently. That's scary.
It is. His studies indicated that heavy multitaskers become worse at filtering out irrelevant information, worse at managing their working memory, and worse at switching tasks efficiently. Essentially, the very act of constant switching degrades the skills needed for deep work. So if you find yourself checking your phone every single time you're waiting in line or during a TV commercial break, your brain is actively being trained against the ability to do deep work later.
Wow. Okay, so how do we reverse that? The rule says embrace boredom, but the practical approach is strategic. Scheduling breaks from focus rather than scheduling time for focus.
Exactly. It's a deliberate reversal of the common pattern. You make deep, focused work your default state during your working blocks. You commit to working deeply for a planned, sustained period, say 90 minutes.
And the breaks are scheduled.
Yes, you schedule specific, structured, time-limited blocks for internet use, email checks, social media, or other distractions. If the urge hits to check Twitter or browse the news during your deep work block, you consciously tell yourself, nope, that has to wait until my scheduled 15-minute internet block at 11 a.m.
So you're consciously resisting the urge.
You are. And that act of resistance is the training. This practice trains your brain to tolerate that slight discomfort of not having immediate stimulation. It allows you to feel the urge, acknowledge it, there's that twitch to check my phone, and then consciously, deliberately redirect your attention back to the hard cognitive task at hand. That redirection is the mental push-up that strengthens the concentration muscle over time.
Okay, but what about those times during a deep work session when you genuinely need information from the outside world? Like you need to look up one specific fact or check a technical detail online to proceed.
That's a critical practical challenge. The key is to handle it surgically. If you absolutely must go online, you employ a highly specific tactical switch. Plan exactly what you need to find before you open the browser. Open the browser, go directly to the source, find the single piece of information you need, maybe copy it. And then this is crucial, close the browser immediately. No lingering, no checking other tabs, no, oh, I'll just quickly look at. Get in, get the data, get out, and return instantly to your primary deep task.
Maximum efficiency, minimum residue.
Exactly. And what if the distraction is internal? Like you suddenly remember you forgot to book that doctor's appointment or you need to buy milk on the way home.
Yeah, those pop up all the time.
Keep a simple notepad or a designated text file open nearby. Call it your distraction capture tool. When that unrelated thought pops up, quickly jot it down on the pad. Just capture it. This reassures your brain that the thought won't be lost.
And then you deal with it later.
You tell yourself you'll handle it during your next scheduled shallow work block or after your deep work session is complete. This allows you to acknowledge the thought without letting it derail your focus. Capture and return.
It sounds like this is all a form of mental interval training. Are there specific exercises we can do, maybe outside of work hours, to actively strengthen this concentration muscle?
Yes, definitely. One excellent technique is called productive meditation.
Productive meditation, like meditating while you work.
Not quite. It involves engaging in some kind of mentally undemanding physical activity, something where your hands and eyes are free, like going for a walk, jogging, showering, maybe even driving on a familiar route.
Okay, physical but not mentally taxing.
Right. And while you're doing that physical activity, you focus your mind intensely on a single, specific, well-defined professional problem you're trying to solve.
Like trying to outline a chapter or solve a coding bug.
Exactly. The key is, as unrelated thoughts inevitably intrude, what's for dinner? Did I reply to that email? You consciously notice the thought, acknowledge it without judgment, tell yourself you'll deal with it later, and then gently but firmly redirect your focus back to the professional problem.
So the goal isn't necessarily finding the solution right then and there.
The primary goal is practicing the act of returning to the single point of focus. That's the rep. The difficulty isn't usually in initially focusing, it's in consistently redirecting your attention back after the inevitable mental drift. Productive meditation trains that redirection muscle intensely.
Interesting. Any other active training methods?
Another powerful one is memory training. It might sound unrelated, but people with exceptional memories often don't just have better innate recall. They have significantly superior powers of concentration.
Because memorizing requires focus.
Intense focus. So practicing mentally demanding memory exercises forces you to concentrate. Things like learning to use the method of loci or memory palace technique to memorize the order of a shuffled deck of cards, or even just memorizing a long poem or speech verbatim. These activities demand sustained, high-intensity focus and directly improve your general ability to concentrate on any task.
Like cross-training for the brain.
Precisely. And finally, if you want a really high-intensity workout for your focus muscle, you can try Roosevelt dashes.
Roosevelt dashes, named after.
Theodore Roosevelt, supposedly. Though the specifics are debated, the idea is concentration sprints. You identify a high-priority, deep work task that needs doing. Estimate the time you'd normally allocate to it, let's say 4 hours.
Okay.
Then you give yourself a hard artificial deadline that is drastically shorter, maybe just 90 minutes. And you commit, maybe even publicly to a colleague, to finishing the core deliverable within that compressed time frame.
Which you're creating pressure.
Intense pressure. The self-imposed scarcity and the commitment force you into a state of hyper-concentration. It's like high-intensity interval training, HIIT, for your brain. You go all out for that short burst. Doing these Roosevelt dashes regularly, even for just parts of tasks, can significantly raise your baseline intensity level over time.
All right, Rule 3 gets potentially controversial. It forces us to take a really hard confrontational look at the tools that are, let's face it, largely responsible for fragmenting our attention in the first place. Network tools, particularly social media. The key shift here, you argue, has to be philosophical. We need to move away from what's called the lazy any-benefit approach
Which is the default for most people.
and adopt the much more rigorous craftsman approach to selecting our tools.
Exactly. The any benefit approach is basically why so many of us end up overloaded and addicted to these platforms. We justify using a tool, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it, if it offers any conceivable potential benefit, no matter how small or unlikely.
Like, oh, I might miss an important announcement, or my cousin posts baby pictures there, or maybe I'll find one useful article.
Right. We focus only on the potential upside, however tiny, and we completely ignore or massively underestimate the huge cumulative costs. The cost in terms of hours sucked away, the cost of constant distraction potential, the cost of fractured attention spans, the opportunity cost of what else we could be doing.
So the craftsman approach flips that. It demands serious discernment. How does someone practically apply that framework when deciding whether to use, say, Twitter?
It's a much more demanding three-step process, and it's deeply rooted in the law of the vital few, also known as the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
Okay, 80-20, step one.
Step one, you have to get crystal clear on your 2 or 3 highest level personal and professional goals. What are the absolute most important things you're trying to achieve in your life and work right now? Write them down.
Be specific about the big goals. Step two.
Step 2, identify the 2 or 3 most vital activities that produce the vast majority, say 80% of the results towards achieving those critical goals. These are almost certainly your core deep work activities. What actions truly move the needle?
Find the 20% of activities driving 80% of the value for your main goals.
Okay.
Then, step 3 is the filter. You should only adopt and use a network tool like Twitter, Facebook, etc. if its positive impacts on those specifically identified vital activities substantially and clearly outweigh all of its negative impacts.
Substantially outweigh, including the time cost and the distraction cost.
Yes, including the constant cognitive drain, the attention fragmentation, the context switching, all of it. You have to be ruthlessly honest. If a tool doesn't directly, significantly, and measurably help you perform those few vital, high-impact activities better, then it is almost certainly a net negative. It's consuming your most valuable resources, time and focus, for negligible, real gain towards your most important goals.
That is a much, much higher bar than just, is there any possible benefit? It forces you to seriously question the actual tangible value of spending hours scrolling through feeds, especially in a professional context.
It really does. And if a tool fails that stringent craftsman test, which frankly many popular social media platforms will for many people's core goals, then what? Just delete the app.
The sources suggest a more structured experimental approach first. Conduct a 30-day digital detox.
A 30-day detox. Wow, cold turkey.
Pretty much. You systematically ban yourself completely from using the specific non-essential social media tools you identified for a full 30 days. Now, here's the psychologically crucial part. You do this without announcing it online.
Don't post, hey everyone, taking a break from Facebook for a month. Why not?
Because a huge part of the addiction to these platforms is often fueled by the illusion of audience, this often mistaken belief that lots of people are eagerly awaiting your updates and will notice your absence, and also by FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Okay.
By not announcing your detox, you perform a clean experiment. You directly test whether your absence actually creates any negative consequences or if anyone genuinely cares or even notices you're gone.
That's a bit confronting. So after the 30 days are up,
You ask yourself 2 very sobering, honest questions. Question 1. Would the last 30 days have been notably better in any significant way if I had been able to use that service? And question 2. Did anyone actually care that I wasn't using the service?
and if the answer to both is basically no or not really,
Then the recommendation is stark. Retire the service permanently. Delete the account. This exercise often provides undeniable proof that the perceived value, the FOMO, the illusion of connection or audience was far, far greater in your head than the actual reality. For many people, this kind of detox is the only way to really break the psychological grip these platforms can have and to confirm through experience that they are not actually vital to their core professional or personal success and well-being.
okay, that's a powerful challenge. We also need to address what we do during our actual downtime, our leisure time. It seems weird, but how we relax apparently affects our ability to work deeply.
It's absolutely critical, though highly counterintuitive for many. The advice is pretty blunt. Avoid using the internet for passive entertainment during your downtime.
Meaning no endless YouTube scrolling, no aimlessly browsing news aggregators, no passively flicking through Instagram feeds.
Exactly. Why? Because engaging in that kind of low-effort, high-novelty, constantly simulating online activity during your leisure time actively trains your brain to crave constant distraction and quick, shallow dopamine hits. It conditions you to be impatient and easily bored.
So it actually damages your ability to concentrate later when you need it for work.
Precisely. It actively degrades your tolerance for the slower, more effortful, but ultimately more rewarding cognitive states required for deep work and sustained concentration. You're practicing distraction, essentially.
So what's the alternative for downtime? Just stare at a wall?
No, not at all. The suggestion is to substitute high-quality leisure activities, things that are engaging but often require more focus or effort.
Like reading challenging books.
Yes, or pursuing complex hobbies. Learning a skill, like playing an instrument or woodworking, engaging in strenuous physical activity, or spending quality time truly present and undistracted with family and friends. The key is to use your downtime not to further fragment your attention, but to actually restore and even strengthen your brain's capacity for high-intensity focus and presence.
Okay, we've covered structuring our work, training our minds, and being selective about our tools. This brings us to the final rule, Rule 4. Drain the shallows. This tackles the sheer volume of shallow, low-value tasks that seem to inevitably clog up our calendars and flood our inboxes. We need to stop just accepting this as normal.
Right, we absolutely do.
Yeah.
We need to stop treating shallow work as just a harmless, necessary nuisance. It's actually a profound threat to our ability to produce high-value output, so we need to fight back aggressively.
Where do we start in draining this swamp of shallow work?
The fight requires ruthless structure and intentionality. A powerful starting point, although it sounds extreme at first, is to time block every minute of your day.
Every minute. That sounds incredibly rigid, like scheduling bathroom breaks.
Okay, maybe not every minute, but the principle is to schedule your day in blocks, often 30-minute blocks, and assign a specific activity or type of activity to each block of your workday, and often even planning your personal time similarly.
So you'd block out time for deep work, obviously, but also for shallow tasks like email and even breaks.
Yes, exactly. You schedule it all. Deep work, email processing, meetings, logistical tasks, lunch, even buffer time for unexpected things.
What's the real benefit of being that granular? It sounds like a lot of overhead just managing the schedule itself.
The primary benefit isn't about slavishly adhering to the schedule down to the second. It's about forcing yourself to be intentional and maintain conscious control over how your time is actually spent.
Instead of just reacting.
Precisely. When an unexpected request comes in or you feel the internal whim to just start browsing, you don't just react. You look at your time block schedule. You make a conscious decision. Does this new thing displace the planned activity? If so, where does the planned activity move?
So it prevents your schedule from being constantly hijacked by the easiest thing, the principle of least resistance, or by other people's urgent but maybe not important demands.
Exactly. It forces thoughtfulness. To make it work, you need to use reasonably conservative time estimates for tasks and, crucially, build in some overflow conditional blocks, buffer time into your day. So if a meeting runs 15 minutes long, you know exactly which lower priority block is getting shortened or bumped, rather than letting that delay just automatically eat into your precious, protected, deep work time.
Okay, time blocking for intentionality. A related technique for protecting that time seems to be fixed schedule productivity. What's that about?
This is another powerful, albeit counterintuitive, constraint. It means committing publicly or at least firmly to yourself to a specific fixed end time for your workday, say 5:00 p.m. or 5:30 p.m., and absolutely refusing to work past that time on a regular basis, regardless of how much work seems left.
But wait, if I just stop working at 5:30, even if I have a deadline looming, aren't I just creating more stress for myself later? Or shifting the burden onto my personal life? How does that help productivity?
That's the common fear, but the evidence suggests the opposite often happens. Imposing this artificial scarcity, a fixed amount of work time, forces you to become incredibly intentional and ruthless about how you use those limited hours.
Because you know you can't just work late to catch up.
Exactly. You know you don't have the safety net of working until midnight. So you are forced to become a much better prioritizer. You instinctively maximize the time spent on high-value, deep work during your fixed hours, and you become incredibly aggressive about minimizing or eliminating low-value, shallow tasks. You challenge the widespread, often false, assumption that simply working longer hours automatically equals more or better output. The pressure of the fixed deadline forces intense focus and efficient execution during the time you do have.
Interesting. Constraint breeding focus. Okay, finally, we have to tackle the biggest time killer for many, communication overload, especially email. How do we actively filter this flood and become harder to reach, in a good way, to reclaim our attention?
Yeah, managing communication flow is critical for draining the shallows. We need to implement some aggressive filtering strategies. One approach is using sender filters.
Sender filters, making the sender do more work.
Essentially, yes. You set up barriers or requirements that make it slightly harder for people to claim your time and attention via email. This might mean having an auto-reply on your email that clearly outlines the specific information or format required for a proposal to even be considered, or stating in your contact info that you only respond to emails that match very specific, predefined strategic criteria related to your core work.
So if someone sends a vague, low-effort request,
You might strategically ignore it, forcing them to put in more thought and effort if they really need your input. You're filtering for seriousness and relevance.
okay, then there's the flip side, the process-centric response. This is about when you reply.
Right. This strategy aims to minimize the back-and-forth email chains that clog up inboxes. When you do reply to an email, especially one about scheduling or logistics, you do a little bit more work up front in your reply to try and close the loop immediately.
Instead of just saying, yeah, meeting next week sounds good.
Exactly. That reply just guarantees 5 more emails to nail down the time and place. A process-centric response would be something like, yes, I can meet next week. I propose Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. in conference room B, or alternatively Wednesday at 10 a.m. in my office via video call link. Please let me know which of these specific options works for you. If neither works, suggest 2 alternative times.
Ah, you provide concrete options, making it easy for them to just confirm. Short circuits the ping pong.
Precisely. It takes slightly more effort in your initial reply, but saves significant shallow work time overall by reducing the total number of messages in the chain.
Okay, that's clever. Now, the most difficult one, psychologically perhaps, selective non-response. Just not replying.
This is crucial for establishing boundaries, but yes, it can feel uncomfortable at first, especially in cultures expecting instant replies. It means making a conscious, strategic choice not to respond to certain messages.
Which messages?
Messages that are ambiguous, clearly low priority, completely irrelevant to your core goals, uninteresting, or where, realistically, neither a good nor bad consequence actually hinges on whether you reply or not. Think vague FYI emails sent to large groups or unsolicited pitches that aren't a fit.
Doesn't that risk offending people or missing something?
There's a small risk, yes. But the argument is that you need to practice letting small, inconsequential bad things happen, like maybe someone being mildly annoyed you didn't reply to their generic group email. Tolerating this minor friction is necessary to reclaim large chunks of your time and attention from the expectation of universal responsiveness. Over time, people adjust their expectations of your availability, which fundamentally protects your capacity for deep work.
It's about training others' expectations too. And finally, for people working within larger organizations where maybe their manager does expect constant availability, engaging them with the idea of a shallow work budget.
Yes, this is a really practical tactic if you're in a corporate environment where deep work isn't explicitly valued or protected. If you work for a manager who seems to equate responsiveness with productivity, you need to have a direct conversation. Proactively try to negotiate and define an acceptable percentage or budget of your total work time that must be dedicated to necessary shallow work emails, meetings, admin.
So you agree on, say, okay, 30% of my week needs to be available for these reactive tasks.
Exactly. By quantifying it and getting explicit agreement on that budget, say 30% or 40%, you achieve 2 things. First, you provide clarity for both you and your manager. Second, and more importantly, you gain implicit or explicit support and justification for fiercely protecting the remaining percentage, the 60% or 70%, for your high-value, deep work tasks that ultimately contribute most to your key goals and the organization's success.
It turns that fuzzy conflict over responsiveness versus deep work into a much more manageable, metric-driven conversation about resource allocation.
Precisely. It helps align expectations and provides cover for you to actually implement these deep work habits. #tag conclusion. So when you pull it all together, looking across all 4 of these rules, the real synthesis, the core takeaway we've reached is this. Deep work, that incredibly valuable skill, isn't really achieved through heroic, unsustainable bursts of sheer willpower.
No, it sounds much more systematic.
It is. It's achieved through building a rigorous, disciplined structure around your work. A structure that deliberately transforms your environment, your habits, and even your psychological response to the constant lure of distraction. The ultimate goal isn't just working more hours, it's ruthlessly maximizing the intensity of your focus during the hours you do work. Because intensity, as we saw in that formula, is the most powerful multiplier for producing high-quality output and achieving significant results.
It really comes down to being deliberate, doesn't it? If you want a deep life, a life of focus and meaning, you have to be deliberate about your choices. You have to consciously work to counteract the defaults of distraction, rather than just hoping you'll somehow stumble into periods of sustained focus.
Absolutely. And the rewards, as we've discussed, they're potentially immense. Not just elite performance in your field, but also greater clarity of thought, reduced stress, and perhaps most importantly, a profound sense of meaning and satisfaction derived from engaging deeply with challenging, worthwhile pursuits.
It connects back to that final provocative thought from the sources. Who you are, what you think, feel, and do, what you love is the sum of what you focus on. That really sticks with you.
It does, and it raises that final question for a reflection. If every little instance of giving in to distraction, every quick check of the phone, drains a little bit of your finite cognitive energy, what's the hidden cumulative cost that this always-on distraction economy is imposing? Not just on your work, but on your capacity for genuine presence and appreciation in your personal life.
You mean like being truly present with your kids or really listening to your partner?
Exactly. That moment of connection, that experience, is only as rich and valuable as the quality of focused attention you can actually bring to it. If your concentration muscle is weak and flabby from constant digital scrolling and task switching all day, can you truly bring depth and presence to the moments that matter most in your life? Or are you just bringing fragmentation there too?
That is a profound thought to end on. A deep life, in work and outside of it, really does sound like a good life worth striving for.
Indeed it does.
This was it on today's book, guys. And guys, kindly subscribe and follow us for more such insights on various books. And also do not forget to join our social media community to stay in touch and get updated.